Welcome back to Haunted and Historic Australia for another of our criminals, cutthroats and convicts episodes and our Sydney Park serial killer series. Episode 11, like the last episode, is another awful one. This involves some kind of mental condition, not just the creep who killed her, but also with our victim. This is the murder of Ada Lambert. But first let's get to know the woman she was. Ada was born as Ada Amelia Kitchen on the 8th of April 1901 to parents Edward Kitchen and Mary Ellen Williams in the town of Tranmere in Cheshire, England. Her mother died in 1909 when Ada was only 8. Her 2 older brothers and sister remained with her and her father until World War I, when the boys fought and lost their lives overseas. Their father was a ship's engineer and went abroad quite a bit. Mary Ellen, or Nell, her older sister, got married and immigrated to Sydney in June of 1913 with her new family. It is possible Ada was living with extended family as her father was out to sea and back, unless he retires at this time. In 1921, he remarries when Ada is 20 years old. However, she doesn't marry herself while in England. At age 25, Ada immigrated to Sydney in the June of 1926 aboard the ship Bendigo. Perhaps it was a strain living with the new stepmother, or after hearing about the death of her aunt, Clara, in Sydney, she was either called for or decided to leave England. She may have even decided to join her sister Nell and her family. One thing is very strange though. Only 4 months after Ada arrives in Sydney, she marries her aunt's widow, 61-year-old Welshman John William Lambert. John was a ship's rigger, but was now retired and may have even known or been friends with Ada's father Edward, who was an engineer. After all, John did marry Edward's wife's sister, Ada's aunt. He and her aunt Clara had emigrated in 1913 and she had only died the year before. They had had 8 children together, the youngest only being 16 and 5 children being older than Ada herself. So why did Ada marry him? Did her father send her to marry her uncle? Or did the sister line it up? She was only 25. She had plenty of time to find a man and marry, back home in Cheshire or even in Sydney. Which makes me wonder, was there something else? Why marry a man more than double her age? Was she mentally challenged and it was more a case of, let's put these 2 together for security or companionship? I just find the whole thing a little off and a bit odd that she would marry a man so much older. Either way, they had 4 children together. John, Harold, another child that's not mentioned, and a Louisa Lambert. 10 years goes by and the story becomes sad. John's health declines as he reaches 70. They are on the census for 1933 in Maria Street, and then in 1937 Wiley Street, and in 1943 they live in separate homes, possibly John needing care and Ada alone with the children, all within the Waverley and Woollahra areas. Ada now has to work. Unable to look after the children full-time, they are placed into care of the state or fostered out. John is placed into an asylum a couple of years later in 1945 with dementia. At this time, all of Ada's family in Australia and abroad are now deceased. Nell and her children are deceased. Her husband has dementia and her own children are taken away, with only one, her eldest John, able to work and look after himself. In 1946, Ada herself has been working for some time at the Crown Street Women's Hospital in the laundry, where she is known to be quiet and reserved. She lives in a boarding house now with others at 196 Edgecliff Road in Edgecliff, and is known for muttering to herself. When queried on the muttering, she states she wasn't talking to herself and didn't know what they were on about. It is hard to know if she was mentally ill or not, but perhaps everything just got too much for her. She did have one joy, and that was music lessons. She had been going to a Mrs. Agnes McKenna in Surrey Hills for piano lessons just up the road from her work, and this is sadly where her journey to death began. On the afternoon of November the 2nd, 1946, Ada finishes her music lesson around 3:30, but stays back a little just to finish her work. After leaving, she caught a tram to Bondi Junction, near to where she lives. On the tram, she bumped into her murderer. Now this case is interesting, as it was technically solved. The man's confession and witness statements tell the rest of the story. On the tram, a 22-year-old truck driver named Clifford Ernest James Kennedy was travelling and had accidentally brushed against Ada's breast. Accidentally on purpose is more probable, as he had just spent the day drinking. He'd only just propositioned a woman in Waterloo, as he'd come out of the Waterloo Hotel. He'd been drinking there for several hours. The young woman who became a witness later on was Miss Nolte, a beautiful young woman who had been shopping on Dowling Street. He approached her, asking her out, and she rejected. She didn't know the guy. She proceeded to walk off and he followed all the way home. She saw him outside her window and came outside to confront him. He wanted her to write to him and to see her on the Friday. She said that she would allow him to write his address down and she would write to him. He was pretty satisfied with that and the thought that he would see her on Friday, and left. So he went and boarded the tram, intending to go home. But drunk, and now after meeting Miss Nolte, let's say horny, and he just brushes against Ada's breast on the tram. She didn't say anything, nothing negative or rude towards him. So he decided she would be his next chance at a good time. When they arrived at Bondi Junction station, Ada got off the tram. Clifford followed her. They went across Grafton Street and to Rose Street. Now it's believed that she was witnessed on Grosvenor Street, which is kind of close to there, at around 4:30. This was where she picked up her provisions. She was starting down Rose Street, which led up to her home. Clifford propositioned her. She refused and kept walking. Now remember, Clifford is very drunk and Ada is mild-mannered and quiet. Clifford snatches her bag right in front of the carload of youths, who will become witnesses later on. Clifford runs off down Davis Lane, and the car full of youths pulls up next to Ada, asking if she was okay and did that man just steal her bag. She replied yes. Now, at this time, Clifford had run into Junction Road and hidden her handbag in a drain. He was now running back towards Ada, and she walked off, leaving the car of youths towards him. The carload of youths decided immediately to take off to Waverton Police Station and notify them of the bag snatching. Clifford said to Ada if she would come with him to Cooper Park, he would give the bag back. Now sadly, instead of simply returning home, she continued to follow Clifford. They walked through the streets on their way to Cooper Park, off of View Street, and down some steps. She was seen by another witness entering the park. Here, Clifford states that he asked her to follow him into a bush cubby where it was fairly overgrown and under a rock ledge. She said no, and he struck her. Maybe fearing now, and all alone, she followed him inside. The blow to her face knocked her false teeth out, and she also dropped some music books she was carrying. She told Clifford that she'd lost her teeth, and he, strangely, walked around trying to find them. When he couldn't find them, he got impatient, and he went back to the cubby and just proceeded to tear her dress open. He started to maul her, and she apparently tells him she loves him. Poor Ada. She may not have had much attention, as her husband, now 79 with dementia, was in the asylum. She was only 45. Perhaps she thought it wouldn't be too bad. It may have been the only affection she'd had in a long time. Sadly, though, she continues to talk, perhaps even muttering. Well, that was enough for Clifford. Drunk and busy, he placed his hands around her neck, strangling her. Despite her struggling, he still didn't let go. She went limp. Afterwards, he finished and simply walked off. He went home and went to his bed. His mother, with whom he resided, stated it was about 6 p.m, so this all kind of happened in around about an hour and a half. How awful. Poor Ada. She'd only been in the country for 20 years, had 4 children, lost her husband to dementia, and the rest of her family are now dead. And now she's lost her life to a crazed sex pervert. He didn't need to kill her, and he stated later he didn't mean to. Had he just mauled her and left her there alive, she probably wouldn't have even said anything. She would have found it hard to get home with a ripped dress, but I'd say she would have just gone to neighbours. No one in the houses on View Street even heard a murmur. She was simply silenced permanently. The following day, Sunday the 3rd of November, in the afternoon, 2 boys are wandering through the park and came across her naked body. They quickly rushed to police. The police came immediately and removed the body, collecting her clothing as evidence. The coroner examined the body and found many bruises and an abrasion to the jaw, as well as a piece of stick protruding from her side, which obviously used trying to wake her, was either by Clifford or the young boys who found her. Police established from the music books that she was going for lessons. It may have even had the address and the name of the woman inside. They approached the music teacher, Mrs. Agnes McKenna, asking the music teacher if she had had lessons. The music teacher said of course, and it was the day before. She would have left around 3 o'clock. The police showed Agnes McKenna a piece of the fabric from her torn clothing. The woman broke down after confirming that it was in fact Ada's. They quickly worked out she was most likely the woman who had had a bag snatched too. One of the boys who reported it to police had seen her around and knew her. They inquired at the residence at Edgecliff, with one man residing there identifying her body. The police interviewed everyone close to her, including neighbours, work colleagues and the music teacher, who all say, despite her being polite and respectful, she often muttered to herself. They contacted her son John, who was 19. He said he hadn't seen his mother in 3 years and that his dad was in the asylum. Ada's life was already strange. She may not have been altogether right. She married a man 36 years older than her, the man that had been her uncle by marriage, her mother's sister, and proceeded to have 4 children with this 61-year-old man. Then she followed a man, a criminal, into a dark park and allowed herself to be mauled and murdered. It isn't something that a woman who had any self-respect would do, or at least street smart. It may have been the 1940s, but I am certain she heard stories of women being murdered. Just 5 months earlier, little Joan was taken. Could Clifford have murdered Joan too? Could he have even murdered Lucy and Betty? He would have been quite young though, in 1940. He would have only been 16. It is a little young, and they would have had to have been strong to kill off grown women. It was some weeks after Ada was murdered that they finally got Clifford. He'd been outside the Olympia Theatre on November 22nd. It was the youths who'd witnessed him snatch the bag from Ada that did him in. They recognised him and went immediately to Waverley Police Station, and the police headed straight to Olympia Theatre and nabbed him. He went on trial, where the youths stated what they'd seen that afternoon, and they also heard Clifford's confession. He went before the jury and pleaded not guilty, stating that he was heavily intoxicated and didn't know what he was doing. Sadly for Ada, this worked on the jury, but only slightly, for he didn't get murder conviction. He got 12 years for manslaughter, which means he couldn't be the killer of our next victim. You'll have to stay tuned for that one. If you enjoyed this episode, click the like, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for our next Sydney Park Serial Killers episode.